Now, there are a few Christian YouTube channels out there now that are denying biblical cosmology.
Cannot exegete a flat earth from the scriptures.
Now, I think what's happening here is simply worldviews in collision. As you know, today we have a certain worldview that we're kind of born into, and it's different than the worldview that the ancient people had, including the biblical authors. Now, the title of this video here is Flat Earth Proven Wrong in 6 Minutes, which I would disagree. I don't believe that they proved anything, and in this video they simply resorted to ad hominem attacks, basically insulting those who hold the opposing view, and they really didn't prove anything at all, and they didn't prove anything from Scripture either. In fact, they did not even read the Bible in context, which is kind of like the first thing you're supposed to do. Hermeneutics 101. Flat Earth is an archaic and scientifically disproven conception of the Earth's shape as a plane or disk. All right, remember this word here, disk, D-I-S-K. We're going to see that again in this video. Many ancient cultures subscribed to a flat Earth cosmography, notably including ancient Near Eastern cosmology. That's correct. I agree with this. Now, these guys disagree. The Bible channel disagrees with Wikipedia. The model has undergone a recent resurgence as a conspiracy theory. Well, not really. It's not really all that recent. Most Bible scholars who know what they're talking about, they will say that the Earth, as it's presented in the Bible, is basically like this. And this is not just about the shape of the Earth. Earth is dry land. Obviously, it's not exactly flat, right? So this whole term, flat Earth, Earth just means dry land. We have to think about the entire cosmology. The rakia is the shamayim. It's the sky.
The firmament or the rakia. Rakia is the Hebrew word for sky, and that's really what it means, is sky.
But this is the sky here, and the sun and the moon and the stars and the birds are inside the sky. They're in the sky, all right? And then there's the underworld, right? The waters above and below. Most honest and qualified Bible scholars who know the original languages, not only the Hebrew, but all the other ancient Near Eastern languages and associated literature, they will admit that this was the worldview back then. Now, most of them believe in the modern-day worldview, but they're presupposing that the modern-day consensus, or the modern-day narrative, you could even say, is true. They'll come up with excuses as to why the people in the Bible believed in something that's wrong. But the flaw in that argument is that they're assuming that our modern-day worldview is right. It may not be. It may just be at best, a scientific consensus, at worst, a flat-out deception. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. Or the serpent deceived me, and I believed.
The earliest written reference to a spherical planet is in the Bible. It's in Job 26:10.
The only other Bible verse they really use in this whole video is Job 26:10. Why don't we look at Job 26 and read this in context a little bit? The departed spirits tremble. This is actually the Rephaim. And in the historical narratives, the Rephaim are the descendants of the Nephilim. In the wisdom literature, they're actually dead, and they're in the underworld, in Sheol. So the departed spirits, or the Rephaim, tremble under the waters. He stretches out the north. Now, this is the word Zaphon, which is the mountain. It's basically the Mount Sinai of the Canaanite religions, where Baal was on top of this Mount Zaphon. And so it's talking about a high place, actually. Stretches out the north, stretches out the upper regions of the sky. And this would basically be, Zaphon is a place where the deity would dwell. So it's talking about the sky over what is formless, and that's tohu, like in Genesis 1:2, tohu vavohu. So the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. There's the surface again, right? The surface, or the face. Now, John Walton, who I'm going to quote a few times in this video, who's one of the top experts in the ancient Near Eastern worldview, which is really helpful to read especially the Old Testament in context. He says that this word, tohu, refers to something that is functionless or useless and hangs the earth on nothing. So this is the verse that people usually use when they defend the modern day worldview. They believe that this verse here is a slam dunk. All right, so let's just see what John Walton has to say about this. He says that some have asserted that this verse reflects some modern scientific models that conceive of the earth suspended in space. Careful attention, however, shows this is not to be the case. All right, so he goes on to talk about the whole verse in context. He's exegeting the text in its own worldview, in its own context first, which is different than ours. The modern day worldview is simply a consensus worldview. It's not necessarily the correct worldview. Job is considered to be one of the oldest pieces of writing in the entire Bible. Did he learn about the globe when he was 6 years old? No. The author of Job did not have in mind a modern day understanding of cosmology. He had an ancient understanding of cosmology. We call this worldview. So Walton says, people saw the earth netherworld as suspended on the functionless cosmic waters below. Isn't that what we saw in Genesis 1:2? Hangs the earth. The earth is suspended above the waters. Hangs the earth on nothing. This is the void right here, the abyss. The Greek word is the abyss, actually, in the Septuagint. This is not the proof text that the people who believe in the scientific narrative think it is. So here in the ESV, you have face both times. Other translations might say a surface. So he has marked a circle on the face of the waters or the surface. It's the same Hebrew word as this, face. This is pane, right? So why is it face here and surface there? So we have circle, we have face of the waters, just like the face of a clock. So again, which one makes more sense? Is there a face here? Yeah, there is. Is there a face on a globe? Has anybody ever said the face of the globe or the face of the basketball? But many people would say the face of a clock. First of all, let's look at a few other similar passages. Oh, look at this, the circle on the face of the deep. Again, when he established the Shamayim. I was there when he marked out a circle on the face of the deep. A circle is not a sphere, all right? Geometry 101. When he made firm the skies above. When the springs of the deep became strong. So we have the skies above, and then we have the deep, the water below. When he set for the sea its boundary. It almost looks like the sea has a boundary here, doesn't it? This is Antarctica, that the water should not pass over his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Oh, the foundations of the earth. Oh, it says it right there. The foundations of the earth. And there's the boundary of the sea. It is he who inhabits above the circle of the earth. Oh, he's above. It's kind of like this up here, above the circle of the earth. There's the circle of the earth, and there's above the earth. Now, where's above and below on a globe? It is he who stretches out the heavens like a curtain. Like a tent, like a giant tabernacle, in fact, with the menorah. The word for light of the menorah is the same as the word for light in Genesis 1. These are the lights in the tabernacle. Stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to inhabit. A tent. It says it right there. And there's a few other corresponding verses that are very similar. You have heaven above, earth beneath, and water under the earth. Oh, look at that. Heaven above, earth beneath, and water under the earth. He has marked a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. Now let's unpack what that means a little bit. So what Walton says here, though these verses indicate that God has established a boundary for the sea, it is not certain that Job 26:10 alludes to that event. The inscribed circle here, also in Proverbs 8:27, a circle on the face of the deep, is likely not the horizon, but the entire land disk. Oh no, he's using the word disk. Isaiah 40:22 uses the same terminology. The circle of the earth, the disk, the flat disk of the earth. What are you to make of this? To describe a disk rather than a sphere. All right, John Walton says, let me quote that again. The inscribed circle here in Isaiah 40:22, in Proverbs 8:27, and Job 26:10 is likely not the horizon, but the entire land disk, the earth. Isaiah 40:22 uses this same terminology, circle of the earth, to describe a disk rather than a sphere. So Walton goes on to say, in Job 26, which is here, and Proverbs 8, which is here, the earth is inscribed as a boundary between heaven and the deep. The earth is inscribed as a boundary between the Shamayim, the sky, and the great deep, or the abyss. This is precisely what is said in the second half of Job 26:10. The land disk forms the boundary between light and darkness. See, up here it's light when it's light out, but down here is darkness. So there's many ways to interpret this passage, but this is not a proof text for the modern-day cosmology. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their utterances to the end of the world. In them he has placed a tent for the sun. Oh, a tent for the sun. It almost sounds like a tent for the sun, which is a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, moving. The sun moves, the earth does not. It rejoices a strong man to run its course. The sun is running, it's moving, it's rising, is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit. The sun has a circuit, and its circuit to the other end of them. See, the sun goes around like this above us. It's very small. The earth is Yahweh's as well as its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it, for he has founded it upon the seas. He has founded it upon the seas. Kind of like this. He founded the earth upon its place. Does that sound like it's a spinning ball? Why wouldn't gravity pull the moon to Earth? Why wouldn't the Earth spin out of gravity and just go flying and hurtling through the vast regions of space? You covered it, the Earth, with the deep as with a garment. All right, let's talk about the flood. The waters were standing above the mountains. The waters rose up, and there's even little floodgates here in this thing here. So, for his loving kindness endures forever to him who spreads out the earth above the waters. All right, above the waters. The sun to rule by day, the moon and the stars to rule by night. When he established the heavens, the sky, it's the same word, Shamayim. I was there. When he marked out a circle on the face of the deep. When he made firm the skies above. When the springs of the deep became strong. When he set for the sea its boundary. See a boundary here? But there's also, I believe, a vertical boundary, right? A vertical boundary. The sea doesn't rise above a certain level. I think that's a lot of this boundary language is talking about a vertical boundary of the water so that the dry land can exist. Otherwise, we'd be buried in water. And that's probably what happened with the flood. You know, it does say that the water rose and there were floodgates from heaven and all that stuff, and there was rain. This is biblical cosmology here, whether you like it or not. And it is different than modern-day cosmology, so which one is correct? So that the water would not pass over his command when he marked out the foundations of the earth. And there's, it is he who inhabits above the circle of the earth. Not a sphere, a circle. You can look up this word, hug. It's circle. Every time you look at it, it's a circle. All right, these three verses, that same word hug is used. Now here it's translated as the vault of heaven, but it's the same word hug.
Church did not believe in flat earth throughout most of its history. I mean, you can always find a crazy person here or there that believed almost anything.
I'm going to quote some biblical scholars over the last couple thousand years who apparently, in his opinion, are crazy. All right, so this is a quote by Dr. Mark Futato, who actually I'm learning Hebrew from his course. So he says the best translation for rakia is a solid dome over the earth. Now, he will also say he doesn't believe this is actually true. He does believe in the modern-day scientific consensus himself, but he admits that the Bible presents a solid dome over the earth. It's an expanse, but it's also an enclosed expanse. So there's a firmament, there's a wall, there's a boundary, but there's also an expanse in the middle. Now, Dr. Futato actually shows this image in his class on cosmology, and he calls it the disk of the earth. The disk of the earth is floating on the water underneath it. The ancient Israelites divided the world into heaven, earth, and sea, and the underworld. The earth was the only known domain. The realm beyond it was considered unknowable. I think that's part of the whole space narrative, is that It's man making a name for himself. It's another way it's the Tower of Babel, basically. Man is going up into the heavens. And they're really not. But people believe it. So it's kind of a sin, really, to believe in all this space travel nonsense. All right, it's the Tower of Babel religion, where they're making a name for themselves. Instead of glorifying the name of Yahweh, they are conquering the realms above. People were created to rule the earth. The luminaries, the sun and the moon, were created to rule the day and the night. This is our domain here on earth, but they're claiming that we have now ascended into the heavens. See, that's what this whole space narrative is. Just like the laments against the kings of Tyre, the king of Babylon, they're ascending into heaven because of their arrogance. And that's what people do when we believe in these space narratives. Humans have ascended into the heavens to become a god. That's the narrative they're pushing on us, and people believe it because they want to become a god, right? We are humans. We're supposed to rule over the earth. This is our domain. No one's ever been to the moon. No one's ever been way up here. No one's ever been beyond here. What a tangled web of lies. Because the earth is pictured as a disk on the waters that are below, the firmament separates the waters above from the waters below, and the earth is on the waters that are below. If it doesn't have some sort of foundation, it's going to be tottering, and that's certainly not an acceptable place for human beings to survive and to thrive. This is a theological picture of the world that does not correlate with our modern scientific understanding. That's true. It does not correlate with our modern scientific understanding, but I would say the logical fallacy most of these professors make is that they assume the modern scientific understanding is correct. This is a Hebrew professor, all right? The text is very clear. The earth is on the waters below. It would be tottering, but God sets it on foundations so that it does not totter. So we get this concept of the foundations of the earth that ties in with the firmament and the waters above and the waters below, otherwise known as this image right here. Now, this is the Faithlife Study Bible. The Hebrew word here, rakia, refers to a dome-like structure that was thought to separate the sky from the heavens.
It's not like you researched this. It's not like you've gone back to the Hebrew and Greek. No, you saw a YouTube video.
John Walton, he has a book called The Lost World of Genesis 1, Ancient Cosmology and the Origins Debate. This is actually a really good book. And I'm not saying I agree with everything he says, but at least I learned a lot about ancient cosmology. All right, that's the main point, and it helps with biblical exegesis to understand the ancient worldview. Whether you agree if it's correct or not, we have to understand the biblical worldview. And all these scholars I'm quoting believe that the biblical worldview is like this. And most of them probably believe in the modern scientific worldview. You'd have to ask them what they believe, but they all agree that the Bible presents a worldview like this.
So-called biblical arguments for flat earth, they're just not there. They're people who don't know how to exegete a text.
One of the most common examples given by those who suggest there is a latent scientific consideration is that Isaiah 40:22 posits a spherical earth. This cannot be sustained because its terminology only indicates a disk, not a sphere. Okay, remember this one here. We looked at it like 10 times in this video. So he's saying that a lot of people say, oh, that's talking about a sphere because it says circle. A circle is not a sphere. Is a basketball a circle or a sphere? Are you going to take out a circle and go shoot some hoops with a circle? All right, so we have to figure out the difference between a circle and a sphere, first of all. This is a circle. It's not a sphere. This cannot be a sphere, he says. It can only be a disk, D-I-S-K. It is he who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to inhabit. Kind of sounds like this image right here, doesn't it? He says, this is certainly not a modern scientific picture, but it is an ancient picture. All right? Worldview. Bible was written in a different culture, in an ancient culture, with an ancient worldview, a different worldview than us. And the flaw people have today is that they assume the worldview we have today is correct. I suppose people throughout the ages have always thought that their ideas were correct, but it's just not the case. Because someday in the future, they'll have a different worldview than what we have today. They'll look back on our worldview and they'll say, oh, those guys had it wrong, and they'll laugh at us. Now, the works of Josephus, all right, written in the 1st century. After this, on the second day, he placed the heaven or the whole world and separated it from the other parts. and he determined it should stand by itself. He also placed a crystalline firmament round it, and put it together in a manner agreeable to the earth, and fitted it for giving moisture and rain, etc. All right, crystalline firmament. Firmament rakia, the dome of the sky that separates the heavens from the earth. The view that the sky was a solid dome separating the primeval waters, common in the ancient Near Eastern cosmology, shared by the biblical writers. Job 37:18 describes God as spreading out the heavens and making them as hard as a mirror of cast bronze. Greek is stereoma, suggesting an embossed or hammered out bowl. Can you, with him, spread out the skies strong as a molten mirror? Well, again, it's kind of a metaphor, strong as a molten mirror. It's not saying it is a molten mirror. Just like if you look at a calm lake, it kind of looks like a mirror. In fact, when I used to go water skiing a lot on the lakes, we used to say the lake looks like glass today. Perfect water skiing conditions. There is obviously some kind of ceiling up here, but what I'm saying is this word rakia refers to everything between the ceiling and the floor, and including the ceiling as well. Just like a room. What is a room? A room is created by the walls and the floor and the ceiling, but it's not the floors and the ceiling and the walls only. It's the space between it as well. It's kind of a package deal. You're in a room, but you're not in the wall. So the birds fly in the rakia of the shamayim, but they don't fly in the wall. The sun, moon, and stars are in the rakia, which is the sky. If they had a picture of the birds here, that would make it even better. And there's some kind of other thing up here as well. The moon, sun, and stars were placed along this fixed arch in the heavens. In Ezekiel's chariot vision, the firmament appears as an expanse over the heads of the creatures, which look like sparkling ice. Above the firmament is a throne of sapphire. The expanse is not a void. It's not the void of space. The expanse is the sky. In the beginning, God created the sky and the dry land, and Genesis 1 goes on to describe that in detail. Firmament, Holman's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. Some scholars argue that the Hebrews had a primitive cosmology where the firmament was visualized as a rigid solid dome, a celestial dam, and a whole bunch of verses there. Above the firmament flowed the heavenly waters. The firmament was punctuated by grills or sluices, windows of the heaven through which rain was released. Others argue that such interpretations are unsound in that they confuse poetic and figurative language with literal prose. Others say Israel's inspired writers used language of experience and appearance or observation rather than language of precise scientific description. When worldviews collide, people scramble to come up with an explanation. When the inerrant Bible claims something different than our current modern-day scientific consensus. And in my opinion, the biggest flaw is that they assume the modern-day scientific consensus is valid or correct. That is a false assumption. They have to prove that first, right? They always assume the modern-day scientific worldview is correct. And they assume that the biblical writers got it wrong. Then they have to explain why. Well, maybe we don't have it right today. Maybe we got it wrong. Maybe we were deceived by the serpent. In NRSV, and God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters." And again, an expanse really means enclosed expanse, like a dome stadium. The expanse is where they play the game to entertain the masses, but the expanse is within an enclosed stadium. And God said, "Let there be a vaulted dome in the midst of the waters." God called the expanse sky. God made the expanse. God called the expanse, that's rakia, sky, shamayim. God called the expanse sky. God called the rakia sky. So the rakia means sky. But what is the sky? This is the sky right there. God called the dome sky. Okay, now the rakia is the dome. God called the firmament sky. Though the Hebrew word can mean heaven, it refers in this context to the sky. All right, this is the Confessions of Augustine. Now, he wrote a lot about Genesis 1, but we see Augustine's talking about the sun's whole course from the east and back to the east again, the movement of the sun in its circular course from the east back to the east completes a day. He's talking about this. All right, he's talking about the sun circling over us in its course, in its circuit, like this. A complete circuit of the sun. The sun traveled through its whole circuit. If the sun stopped its whole course, so the sun is moving, according to Augustine, who was considered to be possibly the greatest Christian theologian of all time, and the guy in the video says that he's crazy. Who are you going to believe? Augustine or this guy who claims that all Bible scholars are crazy? The sun's revolution, the circuit. After all, at the prayer of a certain man, the sun halted. The sun stood still. And so the sun stood still, and the moon stopped. The sun stood in the middle of the sky. This is the sky, and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. Why didn't they say earth stands still? They knew the earth didn't even move anyway. The earth is always standing still. The sun is moving, so the sun had to stand still. The sun stopped. It says it right there, all right, in the Bible. Learn how to exegete the Bible. Day 2, the vault of Scripture. You alone, our God, have made for us a vault overhead in giving us your divine Scripture, all right? A vault overhead. How does that work on a globe? The sky will one day be rolled up like a book or a scroll, but for the present, it is stretched out above us like the skin of a tent. These are all biblical passages, by the way.
So-called biblical arguments for flat earth, they're just not there.
If God were intent on making his revelation correspond to science, we have to ask which science. We are well aware that science is dynamic rather than static. By its very nature, science is in a constant state of flux. If we were to say that God's revelation corresponds to true science, we adopt an idea contrary to the very nature of science. What is accepted as true today may not be accepted as true tomorrow, because what science provides is the best explanation of the data at the time. Now, what if the data is fraudulent? Then we might be deceived. That's my addition to the quote. Continuing, this best explanation, quote unquote, is accepted by consensus, even if it's not proven. Or sometimes the Pope will tell everyone what to believe, and you got to believe it, or you get burned at the stake. And often with a few detractors. But he's just putting things into perspective that the science is always changing. Our understanding of the natural world continues to change. And it's largely based merely on accepted consensus and not even evidence. People believe in a narrative. And the way it works is that if you don't believe in the accepted narrative, you get ostracized. All right? So this astrophysicist in this video, if he came out and started talking about flat Earth, he'd lose his job. All right? So he's a biased scholar. He has a bias. It's in his best interest to stay within the bounds of the scientific consensus. They resorted to at least two logical fallacies. One is ad hominem attack. The other is straw man argument. Flat earthers do not believe in this view right here. It's more like something like this. And there's people who have different views as well. That's fine. Believe whatever you want. They did not show this. They showed this, all right? What kind of joke is this? 2024, all right? People have been talking about this topic for the last 10 years and even longer. Is the Bible from heaven? Is the earth a globe? Written in 1890. He has a section here called, Do the Scriptures Teach That the Earth is a Globe? We now purpose to give some scripture evidence that the earth is not a globe. We have scripture evidence and also scientific evidence. And this map comes from 1893. All right, this is the Gleason map. He wanted to put these maps up in elementary schools around the world and around the nation because this is the same time they rolled out the globe agenda. Just like they rolled out the genderless bathroom agenda about 10 years ago to change our idea about humanity, they rolled out the globe idea to change our view about cosmology. Cosmology itself doesn't change, but our ideas about it have changed over the years. Show me a real photo of anything in space or anything taken from space. Show me the real photo. That's not a composite image. All right. Why did they fake the first images of Earth from space in 1969 on the Apollo mission? The first images of a globe from space were fraudulent. Why not just show us the real globe if it exists? There are no actual photos or images of Earth as a globe ever to this day. A lot of people don't believe in the flat earth. That's fine. I can't expect people to suddenly change their worldview overnight when they believed it since they were 5 or 6 years old and been bombarded daily with propaganda that enforces a certain worldview and a certain narrative. Not everyone has the courage to go against the accepted consensus, because you will be ostracized, you will be laughed at, you will be ridiculed, you will be criticized, because that is human nature to do that. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. The serpent deceived me, and I ate, and therefore it's all the serpent's fault? No. You ate of it. This is a test, all right? We're being tested here. Deception is a test. God allows it because we're being tested. Remember, Jesus went into the desert. Jesus went into the wilderness, and the serpent tried to deceive him. He was not deceived. Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. All right, that's the purpose. They brought him out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. The devil didn't just show up unexpectedly. It was a test. You got to pass the test. And he quoted scripture. He did some solid biblical exegesis. And the devil left him, right? The devil left him. He passed the test. Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers.